Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to this week's Chasing Giants podcast with Don Higgins. I'm Terry Peer. We're brought to you by our friends at ASI Gear. This episode is going to air on July 7th. We just celebrated the 4th of July, and as typical, Don, you were not celebrating with fireworks. You were out in trail cameraing, looking at farms. Talk about your week as you were on the road to looking at deer properties.
Yeah, I had a pretty eventful week, actually, as far as the deer woods goes, because I started early in the week putting cameras up. I bet I got 25 cameras up so far. Just a few more to go. Then I went to Ohio with West Elks, and we worked on the 430-acre property over there that I bought with a couple business partners that we're going to offer for sale here when we get it done. But man, that property's coming along looking really good. Probably the favorite one of all of them that we bought. I think this is number 5 that we bought in Ohio. Sold 3 of those so far, and we got this one in a 75-acre tract currently. But this 430, it has 4 food plots on it. Each plot is probably at least 7 acres. Between 7 and 10 acres each. They're scattered out far enough that 4 guys could literally hunt this farm and not be in each other's way. If each guy just focused around the food plot, it'd be fantastic. In fact, we may divide the tract into 4 tracts of about 100 acres each, with each tract including a food plot. But we've also had a good bit of interest in some folks buying it as it is. And probably what we're going to do is if somebody wants to buy it as it is, I guess it's available. If we still own it come hunting season, we're going to be hunting it. And then after season, we'll probably decide how we want to market it from that point on. But Austin Razor showed up and he planted 2 of the plots in soybeans. He's going to come back and he's going to plant 2 of the plots in Deadly Dozen later this summer towards the end of August. We delivered 4 360 blinds, 1 of those for each plot, and there's already some blinds on the property. So I'm going to guess there was probably about 8 or 10 blinds already there. We moved some of those. I'm going to be posting some pictures this coming week. We had a giant telehandler in there while we was there. We actually had 6 guys there working at one time on different things. Had Austin planting. Us and I were delivering the 360 blinds to the locations where they're going to be set up. Ron was there with 2 of his workers, 1 guy on a dozer and another guy on the giant telehandler, moving blinds and doing some finishing work. We got a fantastic road system on the property to get to these different blinds. You don't realize how big 430 acres is until you start working on it. But we've created some fantastic roads. We spent several $1,000s just on culverts to put in on some of these roads. We got good drainage so the roads don't wash. You could drive a pickup truck down these roads and not scratch it. I mean, just wide open. But we've putting pretty much the finishing touches on that. The outside of Austin's going to come back and erect those 3 or 4 blinds, and then he's going to come back and do our fall plots and spray the soybeans. So by the time season rolls around, that place is going to be rocking.
Road systems through hill country of eastern Ohio is a little bit different than the flat pancakes of Illinois, isn't it?
It's definitely different. Drainage is huge. You got to have some checks and such along those roads that have slope to them where you can get the water off of them so it don't just keep building up and you get to the bottom and you got a tidal wave. But yeah. Ron's got a lot of experience in that, and his operators are fantastic. So they got that done, and you literally could drive a 2-wheel drive pickup truck, and probably you could drive a car wherever you wanted to go on that property. But
it's like you used to say a long time ago, when you partner with people that each have individual skill sets and know what they're doing, you just stay out of each other's way and kind of turn them loose. And the people you're partnered with, this is the area of the country that they're used to putting this type of stuff in. This is this is what they do.
Absolutely. And there's no shortcuts taken on this place. One thing that I've been really impressed with my partners, I got Ron and Kyle. We each bring something unique to the whole group, but nobody is looking to save a penny. This thing is being set up as if we were going to own it for the rest of our lives and hunt it. And whatever was needed. I mean, we had lime trucks in there the same day. On top of the 6 of us working, there'd been a guy hauling lime for 2 days. I think we put, I think the figure was 96 tons of lime on 4 plots. So that lime truck was going back and forth for 2 days hauling lime. Fertilizer, we fertilized the plots. We took soil tests of these plots. We did it right. And I'm telling you what, somebody's going to get a real gem when they buy this one.
Well, so you're at least the start of your trail cameras are out. You made it to Ohio. 4th of July for us was spent, we jumped in a truck yesterday, looked at the forecast of Illinois yesterday, and you all got a good bit of rain yesterday morning. So we did not depart. We were going to put trail cameras up in eastern Illinois yesterday with my 2 buddies that hunt over close to where I do. And we saw that rain coming through. How much rain did you end up getting?
Well, as typical, we missed the majority of it. We did get 9/10, which was very welcome, and we're certainly appreciative of that. But we could have used 2 or 3 times that much because we had missed the previous 3 or 4 rains. I mean, totally missed them. We were dry, super dry, and but we got 9/10, and then last night we got a little bit more. I haven't looked at the rain gauge yet this morning, but we did get a little bit more. But we'll take every drop we can get at this point.
We timed it perfect. We left home a little bit later than what we normally do when we do an up and back. It's about when we're pulling a trailer, it's about a 3-hour and 15-minute drive. And then we can make a loop to all the different permission properties that we have up there. But we saw that forecast of that big cell coming from St. Louis up through central Illinois, and we stopped in Shelbyville, Indiana, and ate breakfast and took our time, and we pulled into the farm right as the sprinkles were just ending. And we flew in, 3 of us, and hung, I believe, 28 cameras on 7 properties yesterday, and then made it back home. We pulled in the driveway at about 11 last night. So we had a full day of it, but you know, a lot of those cameras, we're doing something a little bit different. I tried it some last year where we went ahead and hung some of my rut cameras up back in the funnels where I have my rope scrapes, because we build up some of these ammo cans with 12-volt, like 4-wheeler batteries that'll last the entire season. So I went ahead and took some of those cameras on back into timber, so that I don't ever have to go back in there. They'll run a cell camera back in those areas for the rest of the year. So normally I don't hang that many cameras on field edges for summer inventory, but while we were there, I was really happy with how those external battery packs worked last year. So we took quite a few of those, and Brandon took quite a few of those in on his places too. So yeah, 3 of us, 28 cameras we were hauling. The disadvantage was we could not cut across the field on the Quiet Cat yesterday. All that rain that came through, we were not going to sink in that mud, so it took us a little bit longer having to go around the big tracts of ag field on the edges, but we got it done.
Yeah, those Quiet Cats are handy this time of year, getting around the edge of crop fields, but when it's muddy, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Well, you're not driving anything through the field, and you're not walking across it because you'll sink in and get stuck. But yeah, zipping across the outside perimeter of those fields, it was a lifesaver. So yeah, it was a full day yesterday. Let's take a quick break. We want to talk about you picking up your deer head yesterday, and then go over July schedule, and got a couple other things to talk about. We got 6 or 7 questions to get through. So let's take a quick break. Listen to our spot from ASI for the week, and we'll be right back.
ASI Gear has perfected one of the most innovative camo patterns on the market. The unique camo pattern designed to mimic the feather patterns of one of North America's greatest predators, the great horned owl. Combined with intuitive features, superior comfort, and ultra high quality fabrics, give bow hunters the ultimate advantage. ICO has outfitted over 10,000 bow hunters across the country with over 1,000 5-star reviews. Visit ASIOgear.com to check it out for yourself. Use code CHASINGGIANTS for 15% off.
All right, Don, before we get into talking about you picking up your deer head, for those of you who want to stick with this next couple minutes, I'm going to put up a slide on the screen for Don to talk about one more time as we go through the month of July where he's going to be at. We're going to take about 2 minutes and have him read down through this. If you want to skip forward it, maybe about 2 minutes. It'll take him to get through this, but we want to make sure all those listening on the audio platforms know who to contact as we're going through this Eastern leg of Don's seminar schedule.
Yeah, I've got 7 stops coming up in July, and I'm going to go through each of those. The first one is on July 18th at Milford Hills Hunt Club in Johnson Creek, Wisconsin. This is going to be a really fancy establishment, way fancier than I'm used to speaking at. I've been there before. I've actually consulted on a property for the owner of this hunt club. It's a hunt club where they turn loose birds, pheasants, quail, chuckers, and things, and they do that put and take of those game birds. But they've got a really fancy clubhouse. It's got a gun shop attached to it. It's got a bar and restaurant, and it's not like what you would really think of as a bar. I mean, this is a fancy place, and they're going to be serving prime rib as part of the meal that night. And this is a place that you could bring your wife or your significant other and for an evening out, have a great meal and so entertainment with me as the speaker. But if you want to attend that event, I got a phone number for you that you need to call. It's 920-699-2249. And then the following week, our distributor out on the East Coast, Eastern Outdoors, has arranged 6 events at 6 of the dealers that they service out that way. Most are in New York, one's in Pennsylvania. But I'll be out there for 6 consecutive evenings starting on Monday, July 22nd. I'll be in Panama, New York. If you want more information on that event, call 716-355-8841. The next evening, July 23rd, I'm going to be in Medina, New York. The number to call there, 585-409-1478. July 24th, I'm going to be at Penn Yan, New York. Number there to call, 585-554-0200. On July 25th, I'm going to be in Canajoharie, New York, 518-859-3310. On July 26th, I'm going to be in Walden, New York. The number to call is 516-322-4577. And then on July 27th, I believe that's a Saturday, I'm going to be in Richland, Pennsylvania. The number to call there is 717-821-1891. And all those last ones I read off are going to have food. Each one's going to be different, so I'm not going to go through all the details. But to get the times, the exact locations, whatever, call those phone numbers that I listed, and you can expect to get food right while you're there. You don't have to eat ahead of time. They'll be serving food. A lot of them are going to give away door prizes and things like that. So I look forward to seeing you folks on the East Coast at one of those events.
And if you're listening to this podcast while you're driving or anything like that, this list, Janice has really covered my backside on this, and she got this list up on the Real World website for trade shows and seminars. So go to the Real World Wildlife website, and this list is updated there with these contact numbers. And do us a favor, if you're planning on going, give them a heads up, because like Don said, they're planning on food and trying to prepare to make the best event possible. So it helps those guys if they know how many people are coming. So do us a favor, even though we're not the ones planning the event. We ask that you be courteous to them and give them a heads up and give them a call ahead and let them know what your plans are. Well, Don, we both got rain. That's an exciting thing. Actually, we got a thunderstorm going on right now. I hope we don't lose power while we're trying to trying to record. But we're really thankful for the rain. I know both of our plots really needed it. The farmers really needed it. I was shocked about how far behind the ag crops are through part of Indiana and Illinois. I guess it was so wet through some of the spring that they didn't get it in early like normal, and then as soon as they did get it in, it turned dry. So I know the farmers are really thankful for it also. But you had a big event happen yesterday where you went and picked up Babe at the taxidermist. Our good friend Justin Nice got it done. And you said, dumb luck, Kyle Harmon was picking his buck up there too. But talk a little bit about picking up Babe. Just all around a great story. We used the picture of him on your wall in your trophy room as the thumbnail for this episode. But a lot of emotions with this buck. A lot of story that went with it that was far beyond just the buck itself. And you picking it up from the taxidermist is kind of the final chapter.
Yeah, when I was chasing that buck, I really wasn't chasing him, but hunting him as a 5-year-old, and decided to let him go season before last. I had high hopes that buck was going to hit 200 inches because he was in the 180s, had grown some sticker points that year as a 5-year-old that he had never had on his rack before. And when that season ended, I had plans that were totally different than the way it worked out. Going into last summer, I was really excited to see what the buck did, and it was a very tough growing season last year, and he actually lost a few inches. So he ended up shoring 181, but I found his sheds from the year before, and he would have scored about right at 186. So he lost about 5 inches. But I guess the real story for those who have seen the video is that before season opened, about a month before season opened, we learned that our oldest daughter, Andrea, had cancer. And boy, you talk about getting things, your perspective or your priorities in order in a hurry. News like that will do it. And the deer really didn't matter that much at that point. And my grandsons were coming to hunt. And I was going to be fine with them shooting the buck. In fact, we tried to get them on the buck, but youth season is only 3 days there in early October, and Babe didn't show. So I didn't even hunt the deer until after my grandsons had a chance. I wanted them to have first crack at him, and all they'd been going through at home with their mom and everything. So they hunted, did not get a shot at Babe, and they seen deer on every hunt. They could have shot deer in smaller bucks, but they were intent they was going to go after the big guy, and he didn't cooperate. So once the youth season was over, I went after him, and a couple weeks later I ended up shooting him. But he was featured on the cover of our land management guide last year, along with me and good friends Al Foster and Joe Johnson. And I think the thing that this buck did was it really highlighted relationships with people. Right out of the gate, that buck showed me that, how important my family was, because when Andrea came down with that cancer diagnosis, deer didn't mean anything to me. I mean, it didn't matter whatsoever. That buck could have scored 300 inches and I wouldn't have cared if he'd got hit on the road. That's the way I felt at that time. And then, to let my grandsons have the first chance at it. I would have been absolutely tickled if one of those kids would have shot that deer. That didn't work out. And then on the recovery, I had Kyle Harmon there, filming, as he has so many of my bucks, and he takes a lot of my trophy pictures after the harvest. But then I had friends Joe Johnson and Al Foster there on the recovery, and actually, it was Joe that ended up spotting the deer. We'd lost the blood trail, and we was kind of on a search. We knew he was on the property somewhere. We was going to find him. It just might have taken all day, but we was going to find him. But Joe ended up finding him. And if you watch the video, if people have not seen the video, I strongly encourage you to watch that video. You're going to see some real emotions come out in that video, and I've had lots of people tell me they had tears in their eyes watching that video. But so, it kind of stressed to me how important those friendships are that I made, through whitetail deer hunting. And And then yesterday, to top it all off, I went to pick the buck up at taxidermist Justin Nice, and Justin said that him and his wife made a huge life-changing decision recently, and he attributed it, a part of that, to us and the Chasing Giants podcast and listening to us. Him and his wife are leaving a week from Monday, tomorrow, from when this podcast comes out. They're moving to Colorado. They've got 3 young kids, school-age kids. His wife was a school teacher. But they're loading up 2 trucks and making the journey out to Montrose, Colorado, where they're going to live. Neither one has a job. They do have a church that they're going to. His wife wants to become involved working with the church. I don't know if the church has got a school, and she's going to teach her what that plan is. Justin does not have a job, but and they got a super nice place right now. They got a new home. He's got his taxidermy shop there. Just a beautiful yard, big pond right there by the house. It's just an awesome place, and yet they're walking away from that, loading what they can get on 2 trucks and 1 trailer, heading to Colorado without a job to follow their hearts. They feel like God has put it on their hearts. They do have a church that they're going to attend out there. Babe's one of the last deer that he's mounted here in Illinois before he takes off. That just driving home with that deer in the cab of my truck with me. I also picked up my grandson's Walker's deer. Walker shot his first buck last year in Indiana, and Justin mounted that too. So I picked that deer up as well. And driving home, I got to think of the impact that you and I have had with this podcast. And we get so many messages, emails, text messages, social media messages, whatever, from people that say that, that from the encouragement that they've gotten from this podcast, it's really opened their eyes and renewed their faith, and they've started taking their family to church and got baptized. I know you went and baptized Rick Perry up in Ohio, and these are relationships that happen because of this podcast. And if there's one thing I'll always remember about Babe, it's not going to be even the hunt for that deer, or how big he was, or anything. It's going to be how that deer kind of, and I don't think my priorities were out of line even before that, but boy, they sure made me focus on what's really important, and that's the people that have come into my life because of deer hunting, but also my family, my friends that I've known forever, as well as new friends. That deer softened this old guy's heart. What that deer did, and I think my priorities were already in order. But boy, that last year, which that deer was a part of, it really changed my focus.
Well, I think it's a testament that when we allow God to use every aspect of our life for the glory of the kingdom, He can make something out of anything. And whether that's you playing golf or motorcycles or cars or any hobby or any passion that you have, when you allow Him to work through that activity or that event, or just through that network of friends and people, let Him be the focus and let Him take the wheel. It's going to bless you far beyond anything that you can ever do. And at the end of the day, the buck's still hanging on your wall. But the amount of lives that were indirectly impacted by it, I remember the conversation that when you and I were trying to plan for the 2024 land management guide, and I called you, and you were saying, I just don't know what we're going to use for the cover. And I said, it's non-negotiable. We're using the picture of you and Al and Joe. And I said, I don't care if you get upset about it or not. That's the picture we're going to use. Because if anything says one thing about 2023 and 4 for us, it's about a renewed focus on our relationships of the body of Christ and our friendships with those who are important to us. And turkey season was just an extension of that, with us all getting together and having a lot of fun for a couple of days. So just special moments in the close of a chapter of it, and just awesome. And For those of you who don't know Justin, Don and I both consider him a personal friend. He has supported Lester's Feet. He's donated stuff to Lester's Feet for raffles in the past. But I know those around Central Illinois know him and the quality of his taxidermy work. But he's been a very, very good friend of ours and our circle of friends. And we want nothing more than to lift him up in our prayers and support as they go on this journey to follow what they feel is what they're called to do. We wish them nothing but the best as they take on this next chapter of their life.
There's a saying among Christians, let go and let God. And I think this deer kind of drove that home. And I already was pretty much that way anyway over some situations that you and I dealt with years ago. I'd learned to not fret over things that you can't control and just trust God. I mean, somebody does you wrong, you don't need to seek revenge. If you just take the high road and let God handle it, he'll do a much better job than you ever will. And that's what has really been driven home to me over the past year is don't fret about things that are out of your control. A lot of times, an example is just this past week, we were looking at another property to purchase in Ohio, and we did a little bit of legwork, looking at aerials and topo maps and such of what we could possibly do with the property. And shoot, before we could even get there to look at it, the property sold, and and we wanted that property, pretty bad because it was going to fit perfect for what we're doing. But I didn't lose 1 minute of sleep. I didn't even have a negative thought about it, because the way I look at it is it could very well be that God is looking out for us by not buying that property. Who knows? There could be something happen on around that property that would be nothing but a headache. The economy could tank where nobody's going to be buying property, whatever. Just let it go. Leave it in God's hands. And that's probably the thing that's really been driven home to me over the past year. When you got a child that's fighting cancer and there's not a thing you can do about it, you wish you could take it and deal with it yourself. You wish it was you, the one suffering. You're forced to put it in God's hands at that point. And I already was fairly good at that, but man, I've become a lot better at that over the past year. Let go and let God.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's get the first question of the day up on the screen and let you start reading that, and we'll get going.
Okay, the first one's from Casey Larson from Downing, Wisconsin. It says, hello, Don and Terry. I have two questions. First, I am curious how Wes is coming along on Higgins 2.0. Also, I came up with a good nickname for him. Wessie the Loch Mess. I better start over. Wessie the Sock Mess Monster. Like Nessie the Loch Ness Monster, or just Sock Mess Monster. My second question pertains to a comment you made recently about bucks growing larger antlers when they are subjected to more heat and sunlight. You said both Mel and Smokey love the switchgrass and bedded in there constantly, which would present more sunlight and heat than if they bedded in the timber. Have you noticed any difference in bucks' antler size from the ones that prefer timber over switchgrass? And what is the average inch difference between the two groups if you've kept track? Well, Casey, those bucks did prefer the switchgrass once they moved on to my farm. They did not summer on my farm while they was growing their racks. So, no, that did not have any impact whatsoever, because by the time they showed up and started bedding on the switchgrass, their racks are already growed for the year. I do think the bucks prefer open country when they're growing their racks. Around here in this ag country, they'll spend most of their time out in corn, soybean fields, especially if there's a grass waterway or a weedy area around the edge of these fields. That's where they seem to tend to like during the summer when they're growing the racks. Open timber is also another good area. They don't like to be in the thick stuff, but it has no impact. The switchgrass has had no impact on the antler growth of those two deer. To answer your question about Wes and his property, he calls Higgins 2.0. I actually spent 2 days with Wes. He went with me to Ohio and helped me on that Ohio property. It's coming along fantastic. In fact, we had some very deep discussions about that because, he's owned that farm, I think, for 3 or 4 years now. Yep. And he has not hardly stepped foot in it to hunt. I mean, he's done all the habitat work, but he did that in the off season. Then he totally stayed out, just letting that property get better and better, letting the local deer herd learn that that's a safe zone. And, so they'll pile in there during daylight hours. And he's got that now. He's got a target buck on the farm. I think he said the buck is 7 years old this year. Not a huge buck, but a big 8-pointer. I don't know, Wes is hoping he'll hit 160, I believe. He's got some good up-and-comer bucks. He's starting to attract more deer and more bucks than he has in the past. But it's coming together real nice, and I don't know, we probably ought to have him on here one of these days to talk about it and kind of document that journey.
But just like our consulting clients, the plan is working, but it didn't start with a flip of a switch. Now, there was immediate things that started to change, but Wes is able to hunt different places. He has a schedule that allows him to take time and hunt different areas. So he was able to let it go and just sit back and watch. But, it's a true testament that the plan will work if you give it the time and not pressure it. And you expect too much too quick, you're going to be disappointed. But yeah, he's really excited when I talk to him, and we have a group chat where he sends us pictures and talks about different bucks and stuff. You can tell he's starting to get really fired up about it. So I'm really happy for him.
One of the conversations that he and I had on our trip was the amount of work that it takes to take a property, get it up to par, whatever it needs to be done, and then maintain it. Just maintaining it is a lot of work as well. And he noted that, there's very, very few people, whether they're, see us on social media or whatever, that realize exactly how much time and effort and energy and even money that we put in to these deer and trying to grow these giants. So it's a dedication. I mean, you got to be dedicated to make it happen.
Yep. Especially when he's trying to compress it in a very few short years. Not to say you didn't work constantly on your farm, but a lot of the things that he's doing in a 3-year span, you and I probably spaced over a longer period of time on our places. So,
well, we saved him years on the learning curve because we do things and make mistakes, and then go back and redo them. Where he knew right out of the gate what needed to be done, and he did it, and he did it right the first time. And I certainly didn't do it right the first time. There's a lot of mistakes I made in the process, and what he's done in 3 years, I promise you, it took me at least 20 to get to that point.
Well, we hope that the listeners of the podcast are getting a little bit of that too. So, all right, next question is going to be up on the screen for you.
This one comes from Ryan Richardson from Owensboro, Kentucky. It says, love the podcast. Keep up the great work. Is states that allow feeding and baiting, what style feeders do you prefer, gravity versus automatic feeders? Well, Ryan, without a doubt, I prefer gravity-fed feeders. I don't like the electronics, the spin feeders or whatever. I just think that's something to go wrong. Most of them don't hold the amount of feed they need to, but they throw that feed out on the ground where coons, turkeys, squirrels, everything else is competing with the deer for it. Those gravity fed feeders, and there's a lot of different brands of good gravity fed feeders. That's what we put up this week on our Ohio property. That's what we've used on all our properties there in Ohio, is gravity fed. You can keep the coons out of those feeders, some of them, the better ones, a whole lot easier. Without a doubt, I would go the gravity-fed route on any feeder that I was going to utilize for deer.
I'm going to give everybody a little inside scoop here. A business partner of mine has designed a feeder that I'm going to be using prototype, I believe, number 2 or number 3 this year, that's going to revolutionize gravity feed feeders in the hunting industry. And he could bring this thing to market right now, but he wants to do it right, and we're going to prototype this thing across a couple different states that allow feeding through the season this year. And I talk to him almost a couple times a week. And I'm really, really excited about this. I've been talking with him since the first day he decided to go after this, and I'm excited for him and his family to take on this venture, and I'm going to do everything I can to help him be successful with it. But by 2025, mark my words, there will be a feeder on the market that I will be more than willing to share on this podcast to help my friend out, that will revolutionize the market and in gravity feeders. So I'll bring that to you. I'm not going to release or show any pictures until then because somebody will just steal it. So, but there's something coming, folks. I promise you that it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of the prototype and met the gentleman you're working with, and I wish nothing but the best for him. Can you share at least the capacity of this feeder, how many pounds of feed it's going to hold?
Somewhere between, I think, 12 and 1,400 pounds. Yeah,
That's fantastic.
It's a big boy.
Yeah. It needs to be at least 1,000 pounds. You need to be able to put a half a ton in there.
Yeah, it's a big boy. So
awesome. We look forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to revolutionize this. So yeah, Don and I want nothing more than to see this successful for the people that are involved. You know, we talk about stuff all the time where it's more about the people than the product, but in this case, I'm telling you guys, this is going to be something that's going to revolutionize how people use feed and save you money when it comes to feed loss. So, yeah, I can't wait for that. But he would kill me if I said any more than what I am, and his face is probably beet red right now. So we'll leave it at that. So his wife is laughing, but his face is probably beet red. So we'll put up question.
Well,
We'll put up question number 3.
This one comes from Stephen Lincoln from Columbia, South Carolina. It says, Don and Terry, I'm a frequent listener, but this is my first email. Thanks for your straight shooting and faithfulness in the way you conduct yourselves and your podcast. He must not have listened to some of the earlier ones. A month or so ago, you dedicated an episode to the optimal growing conditions for antler development and the impact it might have for the 2024 hunting season. However, on a recent family vacation to Michigan, we drove home through southern Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky. I was surprised to see how dry the growing conditions were. Much of the corn I saw was roped up and suffering. And while your corn in that neck of the woods is far behind our crop in South Carolina, it appeared to be suffering mightily. I am a crop insurance agent and pay attention to such things wherever I am. At what point do you begin to readjust your thinking about optimal antler development conditions? Do you believe that enough damage is done to fall back into a more normal antler development pattern, or are you still encouraged? Thanks in advance for the response and all you do within the hunting community. Well, Stephen, that is a great question. What I really got to stress more than anything is how much different the conditions have been from one region to another. I know up in like Minnesota, Wisconsin, I think even Michigan, they have gotten a lot of rain. In fact, Wes Delk showed me a picture of one of his clients' food plots in South Dakota, and it was totally underwater. You usually don't see flooding in South Dakota in June or 1st of July. You just don't. It's usually dry as can be, but through that northern plains and, you know, the upper Midwest region, they have gotten a lot of rain. Here in Illinois, we've got, if you go 20 minutes north of me, it's way different, and 20 minutes south of me, it's way different than right here at my house. We have missed a lot of rains. I was so glad to see the one we got on the 4th of July because we had missed about the previous 3 or 4 that had went either north or south of us or split and went both directions. We were in a pocket that was super, super dry. There in Ohio on the farm we was on working a couple days ago, super dry. They did get an inch of rain. We planted those, or so Austin planted those soybeans. I think it was Wednesday. Wednesday night we got an inch of rain on them, and it was needed. And then there was forecast for another half inch last night, and I hope they got that too. But it's the conditions vary so much, even just a short distance away. But to get back to your question, across most of the whitetails range, we had a super mild winter, we had an early spring, and we had sufficient rains during the spring. So what happened was those bucks got off to a great start. I think in most cases, the bucks are still doing fantastic, or the growing conditions are still really good, better than average anyway. There are little pockets like where I'm at that it did back off some, but we got that rain. And, once those bucks are off to a start and they're growing, they're going to be able to find some nutrient-dense foods to keep that growth going. It would take a really, really severe drought for them to stop growing.
Well, the soybeans are up 4 to 6 inches. They're still eating those soybeans. It's when there isn't any feed.
Most of the soybeans in my area now are a foot tall or better, and there's some alfalfa fields. That alfalfa is super deep-rooted. Alfalfa roots will go 6 feet or deeper into the ground, and that's why it stays green even, during the dry period of the year. The deer, once they got off to that good start, it's going to take something really, really, really major for them to back off. With that said, I have no doubt there are small regions or areas in the country where they're not doing they haven't had as good a growing season as others. So very valid observation. But we just got to recognize that things vary so greatly from one area to another.
Yep. Yeah, at least we talked about this on the drive home last night, because, we saw some fields in Indiana and eastern Illinois where, they weren't able to get crops in the ground until really late. Then it turned dry, and, the soybeans are literally 3-4 inches tall. But then again, they're still providing a food source. So, it's what are the bucks going to do? Are they going to quit growing earlier? Or are they really going to stay a month ahead and keep growing? So we're excited to see what comes on the cell cameras. That's for sure.
We'll know soon enough.
Yeah,
in the next 30 days, we're going to have a really good idea.
Yeah. All right, let's put the next one up on the board.
This one comes from Coy Phillips from Apple River, Illinois. It says, Don and Terry, I greatly appreciate all the information you have provided me from all the podcasts. I do believe it has made me a better hunter over the years. With that being said, on to the question. Is it possible to teach an old dog new tricks? My father and I have a 200-acre property exclusively to ourselves. On this property, I have shot some very nice 160 to 170 class bucks, but want to take it to the next level. My father has only shot one big buck due to pure luck. I would say over the past 5 years, I have tree stands set up strategically for every wind, but he will not hunt the wind no matter what, thus educating the more mature bucks. Both he and I are on the same page as far as harvesting mature whitetails, but we are not on the same page for hunting the wind. How would you go about trying to get hunting the wind to stick with him? Well, Coy, you might have the most difficult question of this podcast. I could take this question and go half a dozen different ways with it. You probably should get your dad to start listening to Chasing Giants podcast every week. That'd be a good starting point. Without exception, the best whitetail hunters on the planet, and I'm not talking about celebrity hunters, although there's some very good celebrity hunters. I'm just talking about the very best whitetail hunters on the planet. I promise you, every one of them knows the wind direction every time they go to the woods. The wind is, to a mature buck, the wind, his nose and the wind is as critical to him as our eyesight is to us. And I don't know if you can explain that to your dad or not, that, he needs to think of a mature buck's nose the way he would think of his own eyes. If he was to shut his eyes and try to go through the day, he wouldn't make it 5 minutes before he ran into something and got hurt or fell on his face or whatever. He's not going to give up his eyesight any more than a mature buck is going to give up the wind. There's just no two ways about it. Now, how I think you get that, I said that so that you can let him listen to this podcast. Now I'm going to say something that he's going to like and you might not like. You need to cherish every hunt with your dad. One day he's not going to be there. And one day you're probably going to wish that he was sitting in a tree stand with the wind blowing in the wrong direction just because he would be there with you. So, I get it that you want him to do things right. It would frustrate me too if I was in your position. But, the fact that your dad is going to the woods with you is something really special. And don't let him ruining a stand or two mess up that relationship. Keep your priorities in order. And, if your dad never comes around, he's still going to leave you. If he never comes around as far as playing the wind, he's still going to leave you with a lot of good memories that you guys make in the deer woods. So, hopefully you can get him to listen to this podcast, and not just this particular one, but, every week. And if he listens every week, he's going to hear Terry and I talk about playing the wind on a pretty consistent basis, and maybe the light bulb will go off. But the other thing that has struck with me about your question was you say that you've shot several 160 and 170 inch bucks, and you want to take it to the next level. What keeps a lot of deer hunters from reaching the ultimate level is they get so good that they can't change what they're doing. And I don't know, it sounds like you've become pretty proficient at killing 160, 170 inch bucks. For you to take it to the next level is going to require one of the hardest things you've probably ever had to do in the deer woods, and that is let those bucks live. Those bucks are the bucks that are going to be next year's 180, 190, maybe 200 inch on a small percentage of them. But those are the bucks, and you didn't mention age, so I don't know if those bucks are 4 years old or 6 years old or 10 years old. But those 160, 170 inch bucks that are 4 and 5 years old, those are the ones that are just a year or two away from being real giants. And so for you, if you want to take the next step, you're going to have to start letting those bucks go. So, there's plenty of work here for you and your dad. Your dad needs to learn to play the wind a little bit. You need to let those bucks go. And if you guys can both do those things, both of you should start shooting bigger bucks.
You and I had a rule a long time ago that there should never be a deer that ruins a relationship. It doesn't matter how big it is. And that's whether it's a friend or a friend or a family member. So it's a rule that's very important to me.
I've never seen anyone do a better job of that than you. I know some situations you've been in the past, and you always valued the relationship more than you valued the deer.
Yep.
And that's one of the things I really admire about you.
There never can be a deer on the wall that can be more important than a relationship. That's not having your priorities in place. All right.
Yep.
Especially when it's your old man. Especially when it's your old man.
Great point. Next one comes from Ryan Riggins from Macomb, Illinois. It says, Don and Terry, thank you both for your integrity and unfiltered faith and conviction in what's right. It's refreshing every week. Don, I pray for full recovery for Andrea, and that this journey brings your family closer to each other and furthers your relationship with Jesus. Terry, I lift your mother as well as your recent unexpected career transition. I recently had a similar curveball in my career, and hearing you talk about it, while an unfortunate situation, has been an encouragement that I have a brother in Christ navigating the same thing and doing it well. My question is for both of you. What have you found is the best approach to an introductory conversation with new hunting neighbors regarding everything from herd management and property management to specific conduct issues like setting fence lines and calling first before tracking a deer onto the other's property? I prefer a cooperative, friendly approach in order to have a positive relationship, but also don't want to show too many cards. Really appreciate you guys. Ryan, Terry's laughing because he has no idea which way I'm going with this, and he knows I could take it about 3 different ways too. But so I have a very unique situation on my property. I don't have woods butting up to me where I've got to worry about people sitting on the fence line. with only one exception, I've got extremely good neighbors. They understand what I'm doing. They understand how I make my living. They do not cause me any problems whatsoever. The one exception was a neighbor that has 5 acres. That includes his house and his yard. He does not deer hunt, but he was letting anybody that wanted to deer hunt his 5 acres, basically because he had so many deer that were coming out of my sanctuary onto his property. I tried working with the guy. I ended up having to build a fence between him and I to solve that issue. You know, I don't have hard feelings toward this gentleman, and I wish him nothing but the best, but as far as a deer hunting neighbor, he was not the best deer hunting neighbor. My other neighbors have been fantastic. I don't have the issues that a lot of people have, and I think that's why I've been able to take, I know without exception, without a doubt, that is why my property has been able to produce the bucks it has. There's people that can come up with all kinds of excuses for why Don has success, but I'm telling you, it's the layout of this property. I can allow bucks to live longer than most properties, most landowners on other properties will ever be able to. And I'm not talking my property's in the top 1%. I'm talking my property is in the top 1/10 of 1% of all properties in North America because of its isolation factor, just how it lays out. That was not by design. That's not something I planned. It's just something that fell in my lap. I actually seen it as a detriment when I started to try to build this deer property. I thought I was too far from other cover. I didn't have enough cover on my place, so I created more. But I never thought that I would ever get even close to where I am today. The layout of my property is unique, so I don't have to deal with these neighbor issues like you do. But I do think it's a good topic for discussion. I had a situation recently where a person in the hunting industry was doing some bad mouthing of me, and I couldn't understand it because I had always made positive comments about them, stood up for them when they were being bashed, and I reached out to them privately and asked what the problem was. And I was told the problem was that I had consulted on a neighbor's property to their property, and I had advised the neighbor to build a fence, and it ruined this guy's hunting. Well, I did some research through my client list, and I cannot come up with anybody close to this guy. I have no idea what he's talking about, but apparently the fence ruined this relation, or this guy's property, or he thinks it did, and ruined the relationship with his neighbor. I never set out to do such things. It's we've talked about this before. When we're hired to look at a property, the client is paying us to give them the best advice that we know on how to achieve certain goals. And those goals vary from client to client. But when a client wants to kill on the biggest bucks possible, we've got to get him to grow the biggest bucks possible. We got to keep young bucks alive for him to shoot older mature deer, and that may require a fence. And that is probably the fastest way to ruin a relationship with a neighbor. But I would always advise before you go that route that you go talk to the neighbor and give them a chance to get on board with the program. I think honest conversation, at least it clears your conscience. If you have to do something extreme like build a fence, at least having a conversation to start with, seeing if you can get on the same page with that neighbor is the first step just about every time. Now, I've run into a situation in Wisconsin last year with one client where he had a neighbor that there was just no doubt a fence needed to be built. I mean, the guy was coming onto his property, even farming, and I don't mean coming on by a few feet. I mean coming onto his property by 100 yards, a farm part of a field that he once farmed before this gentleman bought the farm. He wasn't about to give it up. He just kept coming and farming it anyway. In a situation like that, what are you going to do? You got to build a fence, and that's what he's doing. He might have already done it by now, but every situation, every person's different. What you can get away with one neighbor, you won't with the other. But it needs to start with a conversation to see where you stand. It might be that neighbor views you the same way you view him. He may view you as a hurdle to achieving his goals. he may shoot that nice 4-year-old because he thinks if you don't, or if he doesn't, you will. And you're thinking the same thing. Well, if both of you are on the same page letting it go, it's good for all parties involved. So you just got to start with an honest conversation. That doesn't mean you lay all your cards out on the table. You build that relationship, and you don't have to send the guy your trail camera pictures, to start with. Build that relationship first, build that trust, get to know him as a neighbor and a friend. And then that's not always going to work. I'll be the first to say that, but that's at least how you should start. After that, you see where it goes, but you take the high road right out of the gate and see what you can do as a neighbor. See if you can build a good relationship. And if you can't, that's when you go to other measures.
I agree. I mean, I'm the guy that had to hire an attorney because of loose cattle. But, you tried for years to get it taken care of. And I haven't even told you this yet. Over the winter, I walked the property lines just to make sure, because there's a group of out-of-state people that came in and leased a property to my northwest and wanted to make sure there weren't any stands on the property line. Well, as I got around to the southwest corner, I noticed, and you got to realize, where we turkey hunted, how steep the property line is, the creek bottom in the bottom. And there is a ladder stand on the neighbors where the base of the ladder stand is on the property line facing me. So two big hillsides coming down like this, and I'm pretty convinced you couldn't get into the ladder stand without trespassing. But the ladder stand is on a tree on their property. But the only shot you would have is the whole hillside right below my sanctuary. So if the right wind came, I'm sure there's bucks running that. But the problem is they're probably hunting it with the wrong wind, blowing their scent right up in my sanctuary. So, all I can do is about 15 feet, or it's more than that, probably about 10 yards away from that tree, facing that tree stand. There's now a cell camera pointed towards that ladder stand and a sign that says no shooting across property lines. And the minute that they crawl up in that tree stand, I'm going to have it on video mode, and so they'll get the picture really quick. I mean, I could take the tree stand down, I could cut the tree down, but at the end of the day, it's on their property. I really can't do anything. I can't build a fence in a holler with, down a creek bottom. So we'll just monitor the situation and go. If it wasn't for other people, it'd be easy, right?
Well, that's the biggest challenge in deer hunting today. It's not the deer, although, they're smart and they are a challenge, but the biggest challenge is dealing with people. Just when you think you find a giant buck and start chasing him, you're probably with trail cameras today, you're not the only one that knows about that deer. And he's going to attract a lot of attention, and the bigger the deer, the crazier people get. And I'm probably as guilty as anybody. And
the problem that I get
possessive of,
and the problem I get with it is if they would back up the hill, and of course they're gun hunting, if they would back up the hill and put that same stand 60 yards up the hill and be able to shoot the whole creek bottom, they would probably kill more deer because they wouldn't have deer above them. But instead, they think that if they get down on that creek bottom, they're going to take advantage of all the work they know that I've done. So that's the problem. It's when the other people feel that they're going to take the shortcut and take advantage of what you've done. And in turn, they're putting themselves in a worse situation by being below the deer. There's never a place that they're going to have deer below them. The deer in every situation is going to be above them. But during the rut with gun season, they're probably going to get something to shoot at.
Well, the first thing that came to my mind whenever you described that was the wind. We just talked about the wind in the previous question. The guy goes down on the bottom. He doesn't know anything about playing the wind.
No, but he's going to blow it right in my sanctuary. So I'm the one that's going to get hurt by it. He's either going to shoot something or he's going to blow up every deer back there. It's going to know something's wrong. So it is what it is. But all right, let's see. We got, I believe, one more that we'll put up here.
All right, this one comes from Eric Bowles from St. Albans, West Virginia. It says, I appreciate the blunt and straightforwardness of your all's podcasts, and I've listened to every one of them. Even though our hunting properties differ drastically, I'm still able to pick up many new ideas and really enjoy your knowledge of farming and food plots. 2 questions. First, I haven't heard you all talk about giant miscanthus as a possible screen to block a neighbor's view of a home, or would it work for that? I have one neighbor that refuses to take care of their property and wondered if this would make an attractive screen and separate our yards. Secondly, I want to know if real-world wildlife products will ever go public. I am by no means well off, but have an extra $10 I'd like to invest and get in on the ground floor. Thanks, Eric. Well, Eric, I don't ever see us going public. If we get that big, I just don't see us getting that big where that's an option. But appreciate your confidence in the company. We try to have the best customer service and the best products, and just appreciate folks like you that recognize that. As far as your miscanthus question, yeah, that miscanthus has been used for a lot of different things like that. People buying it to, plant around their yard, around their farm buildings to screen roads. I know in North Carolina, a lot of it gets planted around hog buildings, to block the view.
Swimming pool.
Yeah, just all kinds of things it's been used as a screen, so it would absolutely work in your situation. But, one of the reasons that I brought your question up is I wanted to talk about miscanthus. Last Sunday at church, I go to church with Jay Gingrich Tree Farm, and last Sunday, Jay and I had a conversation about miscanthus. And, I honestly think that some miscanthus rhizomes, when you plant them, grow roots the first year, but they don't pop out of the ground. And Jay agreed with me that we've seen too many plantings where you thought the thing was a failure with, just a small percentage of plants coming out of the ground. And yet 2 or 3 years down the road, you got a solid wall. Yep. And I wanted to throw that out for the listeners because I've got a planting that I did this year that looks terrible. I probably got no better than 5% of those rhizomes coming out of the ground right now. I haven't been to look at them for a week or so, but last I looked, and I'm talking 2 months after I planted it, I got 5% sticking, and it was a great site. There was no competition. It was a perfect site. The rhizomes I know were in fantastic condition. There was not a problem with the rhizomes. There was not a problem with the site. No weed competition, and yet I've only got about 5% of them sticking out of the ground. But I am confident that in 2 years, I'm going to have a wall of miscanthus just based on past experience. So I want everybody to hear this. I really believe that there is some rhizomes that will just put root on the first year and get rooted good before they ever put any top growth on. And it really has only come to me in the last couple of weeks that I started having that idea, and I presented it to Jay, and Jay agreed with me 100%. And Jay's traveling around the country planting this stuff, tens of thousands of rhizomes every year, probably 50 to 100,000 rhizomes every year he's planting, maybe even more than that. I don't know. I think it is more than that, actually, because he's buying the bulk sacks of 10,000, and he's buying a bunch of them. So he's planting over 100,000 rhizomes a year, lots of experience and lots of different planting sites and conditions. And he's agreeing with me. We just think that there's a lot of those rhizomes that are not going to show any growth for a year. And I would have never guessed that possible if I hadn't seen the examples on my own farm.
All right, great tidbit. Be patient. We get that question a lot this time of year. Is I planted my rhizomes, they're not coming up. It's a failure. What are you going to do about it? Our answer is going to be, please wait. Be patient. See what it's like next year. Like switchgrass, that root is doing its job under the ground, getting that firm foundation to grow on. So, got to have patience with these products. It's not like a food plot.
I bet we get some comments on this video, people saying the same thing. They thought their miscanthus was a failure with very poor germination, and now they got a wall.
Yeah. All right, so what's on the docket for the rest of the weekend? It's Friday morning. We got Saturday, Sunday left open for a holiday weekend. Yep. You got any more cameras you're going to put out?
I do. I don't know that I'm going to get it this weekend. Sent some cameras into Reconics for some updates. and they're being shipped back to me. Just got a notification this morning that they were shipped out this morning, so hopefully next week I'll get those cameras in, and I got just a handful to get out, and I'll be good for the summer. Or at least I say that, but I always think of something. If I got cameras sitting around the house, I'm always thinking, where can I put these things?
Right.
So I'll probably put more out. But I got my youngest daughter, Alicia, here for the weekend with my youngest grandson, Bowen. So been enjoying time with them. They arrived yesterday, and they're going to go home after church on Sunday. So probably spend a lot of time playing with that little guy.
Yeah.
Took him on his first four-wheeler ride yesterday. We went looking for deer.
Oh, okay.
So
Start him out early.
Yep.
I see a bunch of tractor rides too in the future. So of course I'm betting his daddy gives him tractor rides anyway. His daddy spends a lot.
He's been on a tractor before with his dad, yeah, no doubt about it. But he got his first four-wheeler ride looking for deer last night.
Well, we're going to see how much it rains here today in Kentucky. I still haven't sprayed yet, so we need it to dry out a little bit, and then I'm going to spray, but try to get some more cameras out here in Kentucky here this weekend. But hope everybody has a great 4th of July weekend. We'll be back in the next couple weeks. Reminder, we're going to have Brian Kraft from Midwest Land Group on the show here in the next couple weeks. Get your real estate questions in so that we can have a good segment with Brian. We're going to talk deer hunting with that guy because him and his son have absolutely killed some giants out in Kansas. But I want to talk some real estate with him too. He has built a very, very good business and treats customers and does business the right way. So I want to pick his brain about that. So if you have questions, make sure you submit those to us, and we'll get those. We still are hoping to have batteries released on the Real World website this coming week, but we will announce it from the tallest building and shout it from the loudest speaker when it happens, folks. As soon as we know, you will know. As soon as they arrive, we'll have it. We have everything waiting staged to put it on the website. So I know you guys are anxious. We appreciate it. And we're getting so many questions of when they're going to be there. As soon as they're here, we will tell you.
We've actually got 2 shipments coming. The other one won't be here until later in the summer, probably the end of August. I can tell you this first shipment is not going to last long. We did not anticipate the interest that we've had. We had someone call this week and wants to buy 4,000 batteries as soon as they land. And
2, I had to go to Sam's and buy mine this week. So
yep.
It's in our best interest to have these in stock also. So
yep. We'll let you know as soon as we know,
right.
As soon as we have them in hand.
Well, we'll talk to you later next week. Happy 4th of July weekend.
God bless everyone. Have a great week.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Via Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.